So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third session of the Engaging Communities for Risk Governance, Resilience, and Sustainability 2021 webinar series. So our session for today is broadcasted live on the Facebook page of the Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines, as seen on your screens. Right, so please be guided by the house rules for today's session. All attendees must mute themselves and turn off their video upon entry. The ceremony will be recorded for documentation purposes. For our panelists, microphones and videos must be turned on only when necessary. And for attendees, please send your questions through the chat box at the bottom of our screen so our team can note this and raise it during our open forum. So for those watching through the Facebook Live, you may also send your questions through the chat box under the Facebook live stream. So we begin this webinar with opening remarks from our convener, Dr. Emma Porio, who is also a professor at Ateneo de Manila University's Department of Sociology and Anthropology. Dr. Emma Porio is also the project leader and principal investigator of the Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines and the co-director of the Master in Disaster Risk and Resilience of Ateneo de Manila University.
Thank you, Patty. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, especially the APS scholars in Costa Rica. For those in South Asia, good early morning. And for those in Japan, good late morning. In behalf of Father Roberto Yap, President of the Ateneo de Manila University and project holder of the Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines, also in behalf of Dr. Joel Canoday, Chair of the Socio-Anthro Department, and Antonia Yolo Loizaga, President of the National Resilience Council, let me welcome you and thank you for attending this Session 3, our webinar series, Engaging Communities for Risk Governance, Resilience, and Sustainability. This past week's Session 1 on Framework for Interrogating Challenges of Sustainable Social Ecological Transitions, we had distinguished speakers like Professor Hosoda from Shisha University, Professor Jojo Fong, an anthropologist who just came back from Laudato Si Center in Oxford. We are very thankful for that. And last Thursday, we had systems thinking in local governance, as illustrated by the exemplary presentations of the National Resilience Council on LGU Resilient Program by Antonia Yolo Loizaga, Mayor Richard Gomez, the local chief executive of Ormoc City, his systems thinking and his governance system is really very clear, quite excellent, followed by his DRRMO, Mr. Coloy Tulibao, who illustrated how they use systems thinking in terms of deepening their planning and investments of, during COVID, and especially with the COVID challenges, by working on their annual investment plans and their policies, programs, and actions during and after COVID. Tess Tabada from the Visayas State University, Ormoc City, LGU's academic partner, demonstrating systems thinking in her study of the political ecology of sand gravel mining and impacts to vulnerable groups like sustenance farmers and fisher folks. So this week and today we focus on community resilience innovations. We have distinguished panel of young professionals led by Dr. Noralene Uy, my partner in SICAR since 2017. We wrote the proposal together, and also she was the SICAR PH project manager from 2018 to 2019. We're very fortunate that now she is affiliated with the International Recovery Platform in Kyoto. Still, she's very generous in sharing her charisma and wisdom with us. SICAR has also been fortunate to partner with artists from the Fine Arts faculty. Last year, SICAR PH initiated the Community-Based Arts for Resilience program. I want to thank Dr. Ricardo Abad, Artistic Director of Arete, and Martin Villanueva, Fine Arts Director, who really introduced me to Laura Kabuchan, a PhD candidate in New York University who partnered with me with the ICFP Women in Valenzuela. But she's busy now with her writing her dissertation, so I don't want to disturb her. But the other partner from Fine Arts faculty is Alfred Marasigan. He will share with you his exciting experiments and work with the LOMAD on focusing on the garden. If you remember, in our first day, I basically find, and I told you that I find the garden as a very strong and powerful metaphor for our life, for our engagements with other groups, our engagements with the community, and especially indigenous people. And also we have anthropologist Clarissa Mijares, who has been working with the youth of Buklod Tao in her project preparations for adaptive resilience. We are very grateful to Noli of Buklod Tao Incorporated and our community laboratory for SICAR PHMDRR. Since after Kitsana in 2009, I have been taking my students in risk and resilience and in cities and society to Kanoli, and Kanoli teaches my students on how they were able to do a risk profiling. He was able to engage local partners in the local DRM in Banaba, engage scientists in Manila Observatory, engage the Center for Disaster Preparedness, engage also national and global um, groups on CCADRR. Canoli is one of the highly sought speaker in local and national conferences when it comes to climate change action and also in terms of disaster risk reduction for community resilience. So we're very fortunate today because of this panel of distinguished speakers. So we welcome everyone, especially to my AAP scholars in different parts of the world. Hope you will learn something from our speakers and their exciting and dynamic projects on community resilience, working with the community. As I always said to you, we are very much a believer in the three principles of transdisciplinary action research, that for our work to be subscribed, to be adopted by the people, and also meaningful for those in authorities in local and national government, we have to co-generate our knowledge with stakeholders. In the process of doing so, we also create our own capacities as scientists, as professionals, and also our partner practitioners in the community. If we do those things, then we are able to uh, co-own and become co-beneficiaries, or we co-benefits. Okay, so um, thank you very much. I have listened to the speakers for the past years and so, but every time I listen to them, I get excited of their innovations and become hopeful of the future. As William Gibson said, the future is here. It is just unevenly distributed. So I hope this session will allow you to understand the challenges of equities, resilience, and sustainability in our respective communities and countries. And I hope this session also will help you appreciate what people on the ground create, craft, and contribute to a better future. So thank you very much. Welcome. Welcome to this exciting webinar on community resilience innovations.
Now we officially begin our webinar by calling our first guest speaker, Dr. Noralene Uy, who will discuss community-based disaster risk reduction and management, good practices and lessons learned. So Dr. Noralene Uy is currently a researcher in the International Recovery Program platform
Can you hear
in
me?
Kobe, Japan. Yes, Dr. Emma, we can hear you. We are now proceeding with
Okay.
the first speaker, first presentation, Dr. Noralene Uy. You may share your screen, Dr. Len.
Good morning, everyone. So allow me now to share my screen.
Lenny, can you speak louder, please?
Yes, Doc Emma. Is that better?
Yes, that's
Can you hear me
better.
better now? Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, yes, I can hear you better.
Okay, so I would like to thank the Coastal Cities at Risk for this kind invitation to speak at this important and timely webinar. I understand that everyone has been talking about community for this webinar series, and it is a privilege for me to share with you, especially the students of the APS program, and also learn from experiences on community-based disaster risk reduction and management from my co-panelists. So for my short presentation today, I will be focusing more on describing how community-based disaster risk reduction and management, as we call it in the Philippines, is practiced here in the country, show a few examples of how good practices of both local and international, and share enabling factors and lessons learned based on the Philippine experience. So the post-2015 global agenda has put emphasis on community-led actions in its frameworks and agreements. And I will mention three important agreements here. The Center Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction acknowledges the importance of communities in its four priorities for action. In priority one, it stresses enhancing collaboration at the local level through the involvement of community-based organizations and NGOs. It also recommends assigning clear roles and tasks to community representatives and undertaking comprehensive public and community consultations for priority two. Community involvement is also encouraged in designing policies and social safety nets for priority three. Lastly, in priority four, it endorses establishment of community centers for increasing awareness and for stockpiling. For the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, the important role of communities is also recognized, particularly in sustainable urban development and management. Working with local communities is highlighted while fostering community cohesion. For the new urban agenda, the use of safe, accessible, green, and quality streets and other public spaces for community initiatives is considered. Locally generated data and community-based monitoring are also considered critical for building a shared knowledge base. Now, let me share the framework for how CBDRRM is being practiced in the Philippines. Under our law, community-based disaster risk reduction management is defined as a process where communities are actively engaged and are at the center of decision-making and implementation of DRRM or disaster risk reduction management activities. The focus of CBDRRM as a strategy is to capacitate communities to become self-sufficient and self-reliant to the maximum extent possible. So CBDRRM in the country has strong roots as early as the 1970s, not only because of the country's high vulnerability to disasters, but also because of a culture of community cooperation known as the Bayanihan, and also history of social movement. CBDRRM has a legal basis. That's why we support its adoption. So Republic Act 10121 or the Philippine DRRM Act of 2010 provides for the implementation of DRRM activities in the country from national to local levels down to barangay, which is similar to a village, which is also the smallest political and administrative unit in the country. So RA 10121 advocates for whole of government and whole of society approach, proactive, bottom-up, participatory, and integrated approach, and disasters are viewed as a reflection of vulnerability. Thus, the focus on people-centered approaches as well. The Republic Act 9729, which is the Climate Change Act of 2009, encourages local government units to lead in developing climate change action plans. And the related Republic Act 10171 provides funding for climate change adaptation projects, especially targeting local government units and community organizations. Now, the DRRM law lays down the structure and funding for implementation of DRRM activities. Across the country, there is a DRRM network of councils and committees tasked with implementing DRRM activities at all levels of government. So we have one national DRRM council, 17 regional DRRM councils, and down to the barangay or village, we have 42,044 barangay DRRM committees. Now, in terms of coordination, once a declaration of a state of calamity is given, coordination will depend on the number of areas affected. For example, if only one barangay is affected, then the barangay DRRM committee takes on the responsibility of conducting response and recovery activities. If two or more cities or municipalities are affected, the provincial DRRM council will take charge. If two or more regions are affected, such as the case of Super Typhoon Haiyan, then the national DRRM council will lead the response and recovery activities. Because of the focus on the whole of government and whole society approach, the local DRRM councils, and these refer to the province and city or municipality, are represented by different offices and civil society representatives. It is headed by the local chief executive, which is the governor or mayor, and the local DRRM council office leads the work with support of the other DRRM council members from the different offices. So the local DRRM office has three divisions: administration and training, research and planning, and operations and warning. The office or the unit implements activities in all phases of disaster, from prevention and preparedness to recovery. Now, at the barangay level, the main body is the Barangay Development Council, which is tasked with decision-making and overseeing the work on various issues, including DRRM. And for this, a committee, the Barangay DRRM Committee, is formed. Now, the Barangay DRRM Committee has teams and subcommittees implementing activities in the four thematic areas: prevention and mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery and rehabilitation. So you can see here in the diagram that there are teams on livelihood, on safety and security, on damage control and education, and so forth. Now, with regard to financing DRRM activities, the DRRM law provides for a local DRRM fund, which is equivalent to 5% of the revenue of the local government. Of this 5%, the law specifically stipulates the 70% be used for preparedness, mitigation, and post-disaster activities, and the remaining 30% set aside as quick response fund for relief and recovery programs. The unused funds accrue to a special trust fund for relief with the local government unit, which it can use for their arm activities in the next 5 years. So this funding provision in the law is very important for everyone to be able to implement their RM activities at all levels of government. This is the overall community-based DRRM process that is followed and which is proposed by the Office of Civil Defense, which serves as the Secretariat of the National DRRM Council. I will just highlight 3 important steps here. So the second step, the participatory committee risk assessment. So when the Barangay DRRM Council is formed or established, its members undertake consultation activities with the community, especially the most vulnerable sectors, and ask them to participate in risk assessment activities. The CARPH project in particular has been able to partner with Muntinlupa City, and we have been able to conduct a participatory risk assessment in the city's barangays. Now, the people's understanding and perception of the hazards and their associated risks is crucial in identifying the appropriate DRRM mechanism that is appropriate for the community. At the same time, the participation of the community promotes a sense of ownership of the DRRM process and outputs. The next step is participatory community DRRM planning. So having identified and assessed and analyzed the hazards and risks in the community, the next step is for the barangay DRRM committee members to seek the inputs and support of the people in developing the barangay DRRM plan. This plan identifies all barangay programs, projects, and activities to reduce and manage risk. The people should be part of the planning process so that they could readily cooperate and provide support in the implementation of the plan. Such should also ensure the sustainability of the RRM efforts since it has the support of the people. Fourth is the community managed implementation. Once the barangay DRRM plan is finalized and approved, the barangay DRRM community should again solicit the support and participation of the people when the plan is implemented. Even households are provided guidance on how to prepare and contribute to DRRM activities. Integrated in this process is the continuous strengthening of the Barangay DRRM Committee and barangay support organizations and groups. This involves activities aimed at capacitating the Barangay DRRM Committee, community organizations, and the most vulnerable sectors towards disaster preparedness and mitigation, and training and equipping the DRRM volunteer teams and subcommittees that will spearhead the implementation of the Barangay DRRM plan. Now, let me give you examples of good practices in the Philippines and other countries. In the interest of time, I will only mention a few, but know that there are many good practices of CBDRRM that are being documented around the world, which potentially can be replicated in your own countries. First is this initiative, which is undertaken by the Barangay Blue Ridge B DRRM community. The barangay focuses on evacuation planning because of their location near the West Valley Fault, which makes them highly vulnerable to earthquakes. They rely on a clustered evacuation plan wherein a safe area together is designated for each street of the village, stocked with emergency tools and supplies. They also employ a neighborhood body system. And this initiative has been recognized with a resilience award by the city. Another initiative is the Porok system. Porok is a subsection of the barangay. It's a ward or a zone. And this system is implemented by the municipality of San Francisco in Cebu. This was awarded the 2011 UN Sasakawa Award for Disaster Risk Reduction. So if I may be allowed to play a video, and I hope you can hear the volume, this is a video from the news outlet that explains this initiative. Let me know if you don't hear the sound, and I will just leave it for you to listen to later.
A tourist destination in Cebu is a model for disaster risk reduction. Community preparedness helped the town of San Francisco not just survive Typhoon Haiyan, but achieve zero casualty. Pia Renada reports.
Thousands died in eastern Visayas from Typhoon Haiyan, but one island in Cebu managed the impossible: zero casualty. San Francisco town, one of the two islands in Camotes, is a tourist paradise. White sand beaches, pristine water, in shades of blue and green. But the island is special in another way: the Porok system that saved 100% of locals from Haiyan's devastation. Former Mayor Alfredo Arquilano Jr. developed the Porok system in 2004.
Kumbaga, the smallest form of government natin is barangay. Pero dito sa atin, mas maliit pa sa kaysa Porok. Dahil isang barangay, average of 7 to 8 Poroks in its barangay. So the entire municipality of San Francisco, there are about 120 poroks. And the municipality, mayroon siyang 15 barangays.
Each purok is led by a purok chairperson. Fe Aris says they are organized to serve the community 24/7 and not just for disaster risk reduction. Different committees are assigned to health, solid waste management, and education.
Para nga among makita ang among panaghiusa sa mga katawhan ilabi na sa pagpanlimpyo sa among lugar. No, para sad nga ilabi na sa among panglawas nga malikay mi sa mga sakit.
Proved vital to San Francisco's survival during Haiyan.
Kasi kung barangay ka lang, wala kang porok system, hindi mo ma-saturate lahat. You cannot get all the participation. Pero if you have the small units, a small organization, na grupo-grupo na sila, mas mapadali.
Located in an islet, Tulang Diot is the most vulnerable purok in San Francisco. The quick mobilization of the purok leaders saved more than 200 families.
I think 2 days before the typhoon, yung iba nasa evacuation center na. Kahit hindi pa nag-abiso, through communication pa lang ng mga officers, ng barangay officers na merong typhoon, ready yung mga porok officers.
Poroks educate their members on disasters. They know who are vulnerable to calamities. But above all, poroks bring people together. Purok meetings allow locals to interact with their neighbors and gain each other's trust. This island in Cebu shows a united community is a prepared community. P. Renada, Rappler, Cebu.
This third example shows that what started as a competition actually bore fruit and led to lives saved during Typhoon Bapa in 2012. The competition was also able to win the Gawad Kalasag, which is an excellence award led by the National DRRM Council for several years, indicating that the municipality was able to sustain the engagement of the barangay and in DRRM activities. Now we will look at some international examples, such as the example from Japan, the BOCOMI, or Disaster Prevention and Social Welfare Community Model. So after the 1995 earthquake, COBE started, to develop community disaster prevention groups, forming a disaster-safe community welfare committee with the basic principles of self-help, cooperative help, and public health. So this concept was formalized and mainstreamed in all the school districts of COBE, and the coverage of the welfare community reached 100% by 2008. According to this concept, the COBE city government has a role to provide support and necessary guidance for enabling the environment to strengthen community DRR capacity and contribute to the sustainability of initiatives by communities. So this the initiative and strong support and leadership of the COBE city government greatly influenced community resilience in the face of disaster. So based on this guidebook that you see on your screen, there are 2 programs being implemented under the model: community emergency drills and school disaster prevention education. Another example is the community grain banks in West Bengal, India, which is prone to is an area prone to droughts. So this addresses food insecurity, and it aims to provide food support for 2 months during disaster. So during the harvesting season, the group members save a mutually agreed fixed amount of their produce in the community grain bank. At the time of scarcity or in times of any disaster, members can borrow from the grain bank and return it with interest in the next harvest season. Through this initiative, many have significantly reduced their debt from money lenders, and many no longer needed to migrate for work outside their area. Now, community-based initiatives such as I have presented show common enabling factors that contributed to their success. In the context of the Philippines, allow me to share some enablers of CBDRM. Policy, so there is legal basis which is provided by our law, and the related national and local plans Importantly, it has funding provision, which we are able to undertake the RRM activities. Another is a multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholders and also multidisciplinary approach. So the DRRM structure from national to local levels allows for participation of different sectors and stakeholders. People-centered approach. So this initiative, they prioritize the needs of the poorest and most vulnerable populations to ensure that no one is left behind and the furthest behind is reached first. Also, institutionalization. Actions are linked to institutional processes in the barangay, municipality, or city and province to sustain its sustainability. Another factor is peer-to-peer learning. Information sharing and learning exchanges allow for sharing of good practices and lessons learned, especially since there are several annual excellence awards for the RRM in the country. Local governments are motivated to excel and often have sister city partnerships with advanced or higher income cities and seek mentorship from Hall of Fame awardees. Partnerships such as the one demonstrated by SICAR PH. So civil society organizations, the private sector, and academia are actively engaged in the RRM activities at the grassroots level. Universities provide scientific input while the private sector go beyond traditionally supporting relief to undertaking capacity building and preparedness actions with the communities that they serve. Volunteerism. Volunteers have platforms to actively engage in community-based activities, such as the example of our community pantries that were established in the communities during this time of pandemic. Lastly, the Bayanihan spirit, as I have mentioned earlier, this Filipino custom to work together as a community has really achieved so much for the RRM. So finally, some lessons learned, and these are my last two slides. Never underestimate local capacity. So no matter how poor a community is, it can still generate resources through networking and provision of labor and local materials. We must enable community actors to be key partners in effective DRR action, considering their experience and expertise in resilience building at the local level. There is a need to maximize locally led DRRM by supporting local actors and devolving financial and technical resources and solutions to the local level. Challenges exist. This we cannot deny, especially in participation and maintaining programs. Innovative ways of keeping committee members and volunteers engaged must be pursued. A well-functioning system, a social network, and this refers to social cohesion, and this also comes out from the learnings of the Porok system. So a well-functioning social network based on a particular assigned role within the Porok barangay or municipality where everyone is accountable for certain tasks improves efficiency. Last, CBDRM is gendered in practice and reveal complex dynamics whereby participation in the activities is also enforcing gendered inequalities and power differentials while facilitating positive transformations among female members. It would be important for us to understand the social spatial manifestations of gender roles, power, and agency in the community. I will end my presentation with this call for Ernesto Ceroli, which invites us to engage our communities more and better so that we can co-create many innovations that enhance resilience. I will stop here. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lenny. Again, if you have any questions for Dr. Lenny, do send them through the Zoom chat box or through the comment section of the Facebook live stream. Thank you. Now we move to our next speaker who will talk about crafting adaptive resilience and community resilience toolkit, the case of Buklod Tao Youth. Ms. Clarissa Cecilia Mijares is currently the Program Manager of the Office of University and Global Relations of Ateneo de Manila University. She is also a faculty of the Ateneo de Manila University's Department of Sociology and Anthropology. Let us now welcome Ms. Mijares. Ms. Mijares, you may now share your screen. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, APS 14, and good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you to not talk about announcements and program details, but to share with you a recent endeavor that was done in collaboration with SICAR PH, or Coastal Cities at Risk, in the Philippines, and also um, a community partner, Buklod Tao. Okay, so my presentation is about crafting a youth-led adaptive community resilience toolkit, and I will be sharing with you some stories or some recollections of what we had experienced with the youth of Buklod Tao, or Buklod ng Kabataan of Banaba, Rizal. Okay. All right. So, what Ma'am Lenny shared with us actually gave a very good contextualization of how DRRM and community-based disaster risk and reduction management programs are conducted at community level. Okay. So, the toolkit that I worked on with the Buklod ng Kabataan is called Baon sa Pagbangon. And this was inspired by methodology, okay, from the UK called cultural animation. So cultural animation is a participatory art-based research methodology that utilizes theater techniques. And I came to know about cultural animation from another research project, which was then on primary care and health. And that project was conducted in Northern Samar. And so directly was working under Mihela Kelemen and Sue Moffat, the developers of the research methodology called cultural animation. Okay, so this toolkit very much echoes the idea of public involvement and engagement for DRRM. So community members were invited to participate in a series of online discussions, micro activities, games, and guided creative pursuits that drew from risk-related experience. Okay, now the name of the project, okay, Baon sa Pagbangon, okay, I would like to tell you more about how I chose this name for this project. So Baon is a Filipino Tagalog word that refers to supplies, usually food, token items that you bring along to your journey, or as children, as Filipino children. And I guess some of the Filipinos in your cohort would know this, that when you go to school, the food that you bring with you to eat for snacks or lunch, we call that baon. And so this project with the title recognizes that community members carry with them a wealth of experience and information regarding risk management, and that we can learn from their lived realities. So we this is also coming from a recognition of our position as researchers, that we're not coming in there to dictate, to impose, or to even educate, but instead to value that there is much to learn from the people themselves. All right. So the project, okay, was thought of as the inclusion of other expertise for SICAR PH. So SICAR PH in itself has challenged disciplinary boundaries in its study of environment and climate studies and disaster risk management. So this project tries to further that by including um, arts, arts and theater techniques in the study of sustainable cities and communities, and also for SDG 13 climate action. Okay. Um, the toolkit was very much centered on this definition of community resilience. Later on, you will be hearing more from Noli about the Buklod Tao. And Buklod Tao is a very good example of community resilience in that they are able to maximize well-networked, well-connected individuals and institutions in providing support for community members, not just during disasters, but even for their day-to-day lives. Okay. The project and the toolkit will provide resources for arts-based community engagement that can be referred to and adjusted according to need. And through ethnographic methodologies, and now especially with how this project was conducted fully online, we can also look into digital anthropology. The project was able to develop community-based definitions of community risks and resilience, and hopefully the collected data will collectively inform plans for action for resilience and sustainable communities. Okay, so again, the research collaborators for this toolkit was Buklod Tao, and it's referred to as a people's organization in Barangay Banaba, San Mateo, Rizal. So I know that APS has been wondering about what a barangay is as opposed to LGU, and you've been encountering all these terms. So barangay is the smallest unit of governance in the Philippines. So it's your village. But within the village, there are sub-villages, and we call them puroks. And later on, you will encounter this term in my presentation. So Buklod Tao endeavors to have a free, peaceful, and progressive community that is able to take care of themselves during disasters. Okay. So for this project, I worked with the youth of Buklod Tao, and they refer to themselves as Buklod ng Kabataan. And we met online, and for the first time, because of our online meetings and because of our online conversations, the youth, the group of youth leaders, were able to mount an event by themselves for the first time since 2011. So for the first time in 2011, we saw the youth leaders of Buklod Tao come together and really put in effort for their community, and with the guidance of some allies, put together a cultural animation workshop that we will be sharing with you briefly. Okay. So I would like to return to the idea of cultural animation. So cultural animation is an arts-based methodology of knowledge co-production and community engagement. So it uses creative and participatory exercises to help build trust and make sure that the process of collection of data is democratized. A typical cultural animation workshop would include a mixture of creative tasks, embodied activities, and small group discussions to explore key themes. So cultural animation is something that you can actually employ, not just for DRRM, not just for health, but for any other social concern or issue that you would like to look into. For this specific toolkit, we had to consider the limitations of the global pandemic. So there were limitations in terms of physical and on-site research. we had to look into the technologies available to us. And by technologies, we also have to consider accessibility. Um, what are the available materials or devices that are readily available among the youth? What is easily accessible platforms that are free from subscription and the like? And we had to maximize that in all aspects. So from communication, Facebook messaging was very much a communication tool that was very helpful for the group. We put up Facebook groups, and then um, messaging each other also through Viber, uh, passing on funds through GCash. I'm not sure if the others are familiar with GCash, but for the Filipinos, GCash is a way of sending money through one's mobile phone. So participants are able to receive their communication allowances so that we can meet online through GCash, because the passing of actual money was also not accessible to us at that time. Okay, what I found that were useful, or at least one key learning that I had in designing this toolkit, was that breaking down ideas to its simplest was very important. It makes the project or projects more um, less daunting and more effective in terms of delivery. So we had micro projects, I would call them micro projects, and we always listened to the context of the community. Just to share with you, we actually had I touched base with Buklod Tao in November, and within a few days of chatting or online conversations with the youth core group, we actually set up a date for our first online meeting. And a couple of days before our first online meeting, a big typhoon hit, and there was the participants did not have electricity for some time. The electricity was cut off, and so to we had to make sure that they first settled from that recent experience of natural calamity before scheduling another one, okay, or another meeting, or rescheduling the appointment. Okay, so one of the micro projects that we had for the youth group was this project called A Dahon a Day. Okay, so dahon in Filipino is leaf. Okay, and I thought of this project because there was a walkway that was being developed near the Buklod Tao Center, and there were also some issues about boundaries and um, that the center and its members were facing at that time. But the area was also full of vegetation and flora, and I wanted to encourage the youth to be a lot more mindful about the plants that were surrounding them. So for some days, we said that we will take pictures of plants and flowers and all the vegetation that they will encounter, and they will find out what it was called and what the uses were of that specific plant. So unknowingly, that the youth were being encouraged to do some okay, some traditional medicine kind of research. So it was a good way for them to get reacquainted. So some of these plants, like this flower, the gumamela or the hibiscus that you might probably all be familiar with, Filipino children would use that to make bubbles. But of course, as we grow older, we forget the the um, the magic that that kind of flower has brought our youth. So it was a good reminder for them to look around their immediate environment. Okay. Another micro project that we did was actually um, Photovoice, or another anthropological methodology, which employs the use of photos and captioning. And the captions would reflect of the person's thoughts and also some sense of place. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, in November we were supposed to meet, but we weren't able to do that because of a recent calamity. And these were photos from that calamity, from that typhoon that hit their area. And allow me to translate their captions for you. So the leftmost photo of a home with its furniture piled on top of each other. Okay? Sa blessings matutuwa ka, pero sa pagsubok matututo ka. So with blessings you will be happy, but with calamities you will learn. Okay? And so the second photo of a bag of rice soaked in flood water. Hindi masama ang mag-imbak ng pagkain, wag lang sobra-sobra. It is not bad to prepare for a calamity, but to also be mindful of how we are preparing for this. Okay? Because now the rice is now, of course, it has gone to waste because of having been soaked in flood water. And then another one is furniture soaked in flood water. Sa pagkasira ng mga kagamitan, kasabay nito ang bagong simula at muling babangon. So there is a tone of hopefulness in that when calamities destroy their material things, there is a hope for new beginnings and optimism to rise above all these. Okay. Now, the project was really more of preparation of a toolkit, co-drafting possible activities and possible worksheets for the youth in DRRM. But I think that our conversations was truly encouraging for the participants, because as we paper planned, okay, and I guess some of you are working in theater, we had simulations of workshops and events, but we were doing paper tech. So we were actually just imagining possible events. But in our imagination of these events, the youth of Buklod Tao, the Buklod ng Kabataan, were very much encouraged to put together the cultural animation workshop, having learned from the possible activities that they could actually mount among the children and the youth of Buklod Tao. And we were successful in mounting a cultural animation workshop for 30 participant members of Buklod ng Kabataan and Buklod Tao. Actually, what was even more overwhelming for me, and something that I am extremely proud of, was when we were assigning the youth leaders of what they were supposed to be doing if indeed we were able to mount such an event, was putting together a database of the children within the immediate vicinity of the center of the Buklod Tao Center, and within 2 days of providing a dummy assignment, one of the members of the youth group, the youth core group, uh, came up with a list of all the children within the 500-meter radius of the center, and he came up with 75 names. And so when we were actually thinking of mounting this project, we were like, wait, it was super all overwhelming because we weren't prepared to have 75 participants. And of course, with the global pandemic and the restrictions on health and hygiene, we of course had to be more mindful about limiting participation. So we're hoping that maybe opportunities will arise that we will be able to mount another or maybe two other sets of cultural animation, so that we can actually invite the other children to participate as well. Okay. One of the games that I thought the Buklod ng Kabataan was the game Baboy Bahay Bagyo, but for the purposes of this research, we changed it to Bata Bahay Bagyo. And what this game is, it's an embodied activity or a physical game. Participants played a spin-off of a popular Filipino game, Baboy Bahay Bagyo. Okay, and the game was followed by a reflection and guided discussion of their experiences of challenges. And through this activity, the youth and the children were able to identify who are affected by the challenges and what are the structures and networks of support available to them and the various disasters, whether natural or man-made, that they have experienced. So this is an actual written response of one of our participants. Okay, when they were asked to identify who are the bata, or who are the children, or who are the people needing protection from a storm, and the child answered, my father, because he is coming from work, he is tired, and he has a sty on his shoulder. And for me, this was a very clear indication that children are very much aware of what is happening to adults. Often we think of children as the ones needing support, but actually they are able to support themselves, and they hope to be able to support others around them as well. Okay. In terms of the resilience framework in analyzing the responses from the children, we looked at the Heart and Blinko resilience framework from the 2007, and we tried to make sense of whether they have access to these to be able to say that they are in themselves resilient. Okay, and I am happy to share that the participants of the cultural animation workshop, based on their responses and based on the evaluation that we conducted on how they found the workshop to be, okay, that the youth of Buklod Tao, the youth of Banaba, San Mateo, Rizal, are actually very resilient if we just look at this framework. They know that they have enough, that they have shelter, they have enough resources to get by day to day. They have identified the Buklod Tao Center to be a reliable structure in terms of providing support during disasters and also for their day-to-day needs. And I think Noli will be able to share with all of you today the community feedings that are conducted, the planting sessions that he facilitates for community members. And in terms of instilling a sense of hope, okay, the one of our activities during the cultural animation workshop was the crafting of a dream boat. So this is also one of maybe the tips or maybe one of the learnings that I can also share with you, that your projects need not be too ambitious and that they can actually make use of crafts and ideas that are very maybe in a way simple or mundane to you, but can also encourage and stir in the heart very raw emotions. So paper boat folding. So an origami session on paper boat folding was the last part of the cultural animation workshop. And a boat is very symbolic for Buklod Tao because they need boats whenever it floods, and they have received support and donations in the form of boats. And so among the children, this paper folding activity was for them a very fun and a very maybe familiar activity for them, because this is something that they see, this is something that they can relate to. And so, and on that boat, they were asked to write their aspirations for themselves and for their communities. Okay, and yes, so in terms of key learnings, engage with care. Know always that you are not just dealing with numbers and statistics, you are dealing with people, and the circumstances of people change every so often. And so if care can come in the form of changing schedules, breaking down tasks so that they're more doable, do that. If care comes in the form of extending other types of support, such as listening to a person's problem, yes, do that, because that is part and parcel of the research. Young people and their allies are actively shaping their communities. I'd like to emphasize here the word allies. Okay, so young people are very much eager to work with their communities, for their communities, but they also need support. They actually crave mentorship. And if only we can identify these mentors in communities and make sure that they are working hand in hand with the youth, this could be a very powerful thing to have, this connection. And I think another thing that I have to also stress is that youth-led initiatives create supportive and empowering environments for all. You're now studying systems thinking, and systems thinking, as Dr. Porio said earlier, it's actually commonsensical. It's making sure that everyone and everything has its own place in society, in the lives of people. And actually it's that assumption that youth-led initiatives are just for the youth that is not making us very progressive. So youth-led initiatives are actually for the empowerment of all, for their peers, for their youth peers, for their families, and for their communities. So there is no need for us to separate the youth from the broader community and the social context. Okay? And if we are able to do that, the children and the youth are change makers in the area of disaster preparedness and risk management. Okay, understanding how children and youth and communities perceive crisis and crisis management and how they access and experience basic services and support during such times is crucial in developing a robust evidence base that informs effective disaster risk management and mitigation programs. So thank you very much for allowing me to share these stories with you today.
Thank you, Isa. Great work.
Thank you very much, Miss Isa, for sharing your learnings and experiences with crafting projects with Buklod Kabataan. If for the participants, if you have any questions for Miss Isa, you may send your questions through the Zoom chat box or through the comment section of the Facebook live stream. So we may raise them later during the open forum. Okay. Now let me introduce to you the next speaker, Mr. Alfred Marasigan. Mr. Alfred Marasigan will speak about Omehen and E-punla, gardens as method, meeting, and moment. Mr. Marasigan is currently a faculty member of the Department of Fine Arts of the Ateneo de Manila University. Let us now welcome Mr. Marasigan.
Hi everyone. So good morning to all, and good morning to
Hello,
Coastal,
Alfred. Thank
Coastal
you,
Cities at
Alfred.
Risk, and Dr. Emma. Hello po, and to APS team and everyone else watching the live stream. So let me just share my screen for a bit so that we can see my presentation. I will actually be talking mostly about two of the projects that we have engaged with in Ateneo, and I think to also introduce, I'm also a practicing visual artist, and yes, also a faculty member, and I'm very thankful to like be able to um, put together these kinds of projects because like as Isa said, it is really in listening to these communities that we are able to build resilience and keep it away from being a concept and more of a practice. So today I will be talking about two projects actually. I will talk about Omehen and E-punla. So Omehen actually is the more, I'll probably be talking about it 2/3 of the time. It has started for like around, it has started around like 2019. It's still kind of ongoing, and E-punla is like a semestral component. Both of them are like actually like classes, but they mostly revolve around gardens as method, meeting, and moment. So if I may read a short excerpt for um, the summary of the project. It's very sprawling, a kind of a sprawling project, and um, if you're gonna take away something from Omehen first, it is a class, it is an artistic project or research, and it is also a protest. So we wanted to use those three like um, formats within a simple, very small garden. Actually, it's like 5 meters by 5 meters. It's not at all like a big project, but I would say that something simple could uh, touch on so many like concepts like food security, indigeneity, pedagogy, and the climate crisis as well. So it's something that we focused on for like the past 2 years. So the project Omehen, which means harvest in Manobo Talaingod, the indigenous language of the Mindanao region in the south of the Philippines, was conceived by me, Carl Castro, and Gelan Luarca in collaboration with the Lumad Indigenous Community, or Save Our Schools network, in exile in Manila, following the the bombing of Lumad schools during the ongoing armed conflict in Mindanao, the Lumad people found refuge in various academic institutions in Manila, including the Ateneo de Manila University, where the artists teach. So the Lumad indigenous community, or the Save Our Schools network, are more colloquially called as the Bakwit school students. And Bakwit is really derived from evacuees or evacuate. So it is something that they have repurposed for their own movement from the south of the Philippines to Manila to seek refuge, because the south are like probably like the rest of the Philippines, but Mindanao is very rich in resources, and actually one of the more like closer resources to us in nationhood is that um, they're actually the stewards of the Pantaron Range, where the Philippine eagle resides. So it is among the many things that they're trying to like preserve for their culture. Um, that is one. Okay. So here we also see a lot of the protests that the community is already engaging in while being housed in the University of the Philippines, Diliman. So it's very near Ateneo, just a jeepney ride away. And the UP Fine Arts department are able to like house them there, and the university actually helps protect them from state-sponsored interference, because universities are should be like should remain protected from being from violence. So it served as a sort of sanctuary also for them, the university. So that's why we had this idea of using universities as a place for the community to feel safe, but also learn and to have and facilitate like an exchange of knowledge. So yeah, here are the protests that happened from 2000 from 2020, like early 2020 until now. They've been, when you come to think of like these communities, you would like if you could witness how much they are doing to speak for themselves, and it's already a lot. They're already trying to recover from the trauma of like moving from the south to the city and trying to adapt and preserving their culture and fighting the state. So it's a lot. So it's something that we wanted to take part in that kind of struggle via our garden. So actually, harvesting is an integral part of the cosmological practice of the Lumad communities, and therefore fundamental to their systems of education and knowledge sharing. Um, Thus, the artists work together with members of the Lumad community and students of the university to create a space of harvest within the academic institution and to facilitate the continuation of this practice and the mutual sharing of knowledge. So I have to emphasize that I think across both of the projects that I'll be sharing to you, including E-punla, like knowledge is a very important resource, and I think it is one of the very for like apparently class-based things that is very scarce for like it's very difficult to access for many people, and it's a big part of like what resilience should be built on. Over the course of a year, the artists, students, and Lumad communities engage in artistic and agricultural practices together. And it's yeah, so here if we see like the project, we really tried to. So this is the plot of land actually, and as a visual artist, much of my practice is mostly on video art and on digital art. So we wanted to do like a live stream or a CCTV of the growing plants, but it didn't pan out. And I think one of the strengths, but also limitation of like an arts-based approach to community building and resilience is that it allows for mistakes, and it allows for like these types of plans that didn't happen to be learned from, instead of like being at like efficiency based processes. So here is our little garden. So for a 15-minute presentation, it's a pretty small garden. But we will find out later that the Lumad communities themselves are able to like solve this problem of like the small area, because even then we just wanted to impart to them the feeling from their home towns of being able to work with actual land. And as much as urban gardening is something that is um, a very resourceful, like having to be in touch with the land itself is a very different feeling and experience for them, especially when they learn agriculture hand in hand with their classes. So it's like and it's a full day thing. So time is also different to them, because I think to us when in our universities when we study it's like okay 1 hour 3 hours, but to them it's like a whole day affair, because learning is something that goes hand in hand with how they live. It's not a separate rehearsal of things, but it is an actual application of um, the knowledge exchange between their teachers and their peers. So in what we're able to capture with the live stream, I mean the CCTV didn't pan out to like cover the whole duration of the project, but we were able to capture the ritual of like invoking the spirits and asking for like permission and guidance uh, to to have a great harvest. And I think this is so in partnership also with like fine arts program. We have students who co-learned with the Lumad Bakwit schools, and there is us, the teachers, three of us, and also Sir Andrew, the agriculturist of the Bakwit schools, the Lumad communities. So we all like exchange knowledge, and this ritual was very eye-opening, because I guess when we think of like schools and like field work, it's always separate from like theory, but like when we treat the garden as a classroom, we get to see things hands-on. And I think it just goes to show like how detached we have been to our food production, because it I mean it's still even to me it's still jarring to see like a chicken being killed live. So and even to our students, I think even if they've read about rituals, to witness something conducted by the Lumad communities, it is very eye-opening to them, and it is great to like learn from indigenous people how they relate with the environment. It's all very much, sometimes it's a cliche, but we never really learn how interconnected things are, even if it's not exactly their own land. But to them, to invoke that like communal aspect of gardening is to invite great harvest, but also like a good attitude towards nature. So yeah, so this is the students are very instinctive. When we took them on a tour around school to like show them around, when we took them to the site, they immediately worked on the land. So it's to them it's they were actually musing about it and thinking that we haven't done this in a very long time, because we have been trying to evacuate and think of like like basic survival things. That culture becomes like second to like the things that they get to practice. So it's uh, in a way it is very like I'm very happy like to be able to provide that platform for them, because we see in real time how cultures get to disintegrate because of threats, not only in their livelihood but also in their land and also in their identity. So this is particularly interesting feature of the ritual, which is they brought like we didn't get to ask much, but they brought like wrapped leaves, and they performed some sort of like divination where the blood of the chicken is supposed to predict what you should watch out for in a harvest. So if it's like a bad weather, or is it like any threats to it. And then they said that seeing the blood clots of the chicken blood on the leaves, there might be like insects. So it's something that we watched out for during the land clearing ritual. Oh, wait a second here. And also there's also this sense of like uh yeah, even if the practice may seem like mysterious to us, I think there's also this like accountability element to the ritual, because the blood of the chicken, we had to had at least a drop of it in our hands and in the tools, so that the tools won't hurt us now, and that so that we can use them properly. So it's good to like really implicate everyone in this process, that we are using the earth, we are supposed to be, we should be responsible in the way that we cultivate it. So here are the actual vegetables that we are able to like plant. It's very interesting how the Blumad communities chose 4 particular vegetables: okra, string beans, ampalaya or bitter gourd, and kangkong or water cabbage. Yeah. So those, and it's good because actually, if some of you are familiar, in the Philippines we have like a national, not national, but like a folk song called the Bahay Kubo, and a lot, like probably 3/4 of these are not part of the Bahay Kubo because it's a very regional song, a very Tagalog song. So this project also revealed to us the um, disparities between like regional identities. During the pandemic, we were we were forced to monitor it like halfway. We wanted the class actually to culminate in like a harvest, and we will all have like lunch or like a meal that we will share together to reinforce that communal quality of a garden. But because it got cut off like around March last year, we were forced to expand our collaboration to the maintenance staff and to our faculty and our fellow Jesuit like priests. So it really takes not just a village to raise a child, but also to like grow vegetables. So we enlisted the help of the maintenance team, and they sent us updates of like how they're growing, and actually they're the ones who benefited most from it because they do take care of it, but we weren't able to like send the vegetables back to the Lumad communities. But that will have a resolution later on. And in the middle of all of this, the government hasn't stopped threatening their safety, and part of that is like banning like ABS-CBN, or like a really big broadcasting corporation. And I'm showing this not because it is part of the project, but it is something that coincides with it, and not really prompted by us. But I think they have used the language of vegetables on their own to protest as well, and including like posts about the junking of the terror law, which is something that aims to silence a lot of dissent towards the government, and weaponizing the pandemic to stop all of these like criticisms against them. So in addition to, in the middle of all of that, I think I in a way, as an educator and artist, I was also worried that they are sharing more knowledge than we are giving to them. And I think somehow to upend that, we wanted to use Ateneo's like maker space or 3D, like a studio to like commemorate these vegetables as monument or memory of this, like, because vegetables are passing, they are not like eternal artworks, but they become part of us when we consume them. So so we modeled these vegetables online, and then attempted to 3D print them, and keep these like small mementos as like reminder of the garden's like temporality, because eventually as we will see, the garden will not be forever, because there was a storm somewhere in the middle of the pandemic, and we weren't able to like re-maintain or like rejuvenate the garden, so we had to let it go. And in the middle of all of this, there are also online classes. So if you can imagine, I mean, to be able to, it is a privilege for me to like step in and out of the lives of the Lumad Bakwit students, but it's simply just a fraction of like how they are handling all the trauma that is happening to them, past, present, and future. So we also sent some modules to them about like, in a way, like a decolonized way of like learning about art, because they do want to learn about art, but it's somehow it's good to know that sometimes what you want to teach is different from what students want to learn. So if you come from what they want to learn, uh, it's more engaging to them, and they would continue it better and take it with them. So yeah, this is the storm, and the garden was eventually like reabsorbed by the land. And when we come to think of it, the land that we actually we planted on is like part of the soil that came from the building that actually gave us the grant that to do the gardening. So it's like it's a little poetic that it comes back to that same land where the resources came from. But here's what I'm also saying, that the epilogue to the story, well, not really, but like one epilogue to it, is that in UP they are able to like acquire a larger plot of land, and they're able to like gather more vegetables, and it's such a joy to like see them not really apply what we taught them, but to just extend what they have already initiated with us. And these harvests are something that have fed like hundreds of them, because I mean, you would think that like it's already a lot, but actually when you factor in like the refrigeration and the number of the students housing there, it's just for like probably a week. So it's not that much, but it is something that has probably like helped them cope with their situation. So these are the crops that were harvested in October 2020, which sadly didn't happen again because the UPDND Accord did not allow them to like go out that much from the actual homes, from their actual homes inside the university. So they aren't able to tend every time because a lot of people are trying to spy on them a lot. So yeah, so here are and it's a more like expanded range of vegetables that they're able to like grow. So there, and it was nice to see that they are more abundant on their own actually compared to like when they are with us. But I think it still stands that vegetables have been like a tool for a tool for art, a tool for education, and a tool for protest. Because I think what is a little poetic about vegetables just silently growing in the middle of the metro is that it becomes like a symbol of resilience, but also like a practical like nourishment for the Lumad community. So to continue that, actually we are able we put together this like sort of we put together this sort of we put together this sort of like podcast where because I feel like they like their main goal is to really be heard and their stories to be told, because that's what would a lot of people are really turned off by a lot of like advocacies, because it gets them tired, or it's like something that really makes them work harder. But I think stories are really very powerful because they reach into like it's something very common to us. We like stories and we react to them in a very emotional way. And I think um, in putting together this short podcast, we are able to like actually hear them tell their stories and uh, expand on what their struggles are on their own terms. Because for us as artists, I feel like I I personally, for me, I learned to like relegate a lot of the duties to them and just be able to help put together a platform that will allow them to be heard. So these podcasts are something that we cultivated. We talk about like different topics, and actually some of the art materials that we provided to them, they're able to talk about specific like paintings or works. If I could recommend one episode, you could listen to like Teo sa Papel or Paper Dance, which has translations on a different website. So again, language is also something that sometimes hinders them from telling their full truth to the people, but art is something that shows people how they understand their situation. Um, to be able to like secure like further help for this initiative, we partnered with the international curators, the Independent Curators International, to tour the podcast in different institutions and art exhibitions. And I think this is the part where also we demand more from the people who are able to do it. So this one is like engaging a little bit more with people who are interested in the arts. And since you like beauty, you might as well like take in also difficult parts of producing that kind of beauty. So here, so it was, so they exhibited it, I think first in Haverford College in Cantor Fitzgerald Gallery, alongside other artworks that deal with collectivization and indigeneity. So a lot of these like different formats are follow. We mostly work with like audio because I think listening is something that is very underrated. We want to view and be passive about like information, but listening takes an active it's an active process. So there, and I think again, not our not our initiative, but the Lumad Schools initiative is they also held an art auction where the paintings that they were able to produce, both from our contributed materials and also their own like materials, they held an auction that showed and showcased their works. So it's nice to see to witness them being able to like tell their stories once again in their own terms via art. So all of these are actually help them express themselves and also earn from the donations and also the auction returns. So I think I'm very happy also to like the latest news on the Lumad Bakwit schools is that they just had their moving up ceremony or their sort of graduation last Saturday. So if you would like to support them, you can check out these like websites or Save Our Schools Network, where they themselves are able to tell their own stories in their own terms. So at least for us, at least for me as part of the artists who initiated the project, we continue cultivating not just the garden, which is actually already lost, but cultivating these relationships that really matter in building resilience. So shortly, I will also talk about E-punla. So E-punla is we didn't work with the Lumad Bakwit schools, but we worked with ISO, which is so the Institute of Social Order within Ateneo, and it's a Jesuit apostolate, Jesuit social apostolate that works with various communities across the archipelago, and with my class, which is an elective called Experimental Collaboration in the Arts. So this one is a little bit more on like the pedagogy side of gardens, and gardens are very hands-on. It's something that you really have to have to be in contact with. But I think we wanted to really keep working on gardens, even if we're working on it virtually. And I think ISO and CCARP are very open-minded and very like helpful partners in putting together these ideas. And I think the virtual space should be taken advantage of instead of like being a hindrance to something as physical as gardening. So with the help of ISO, we are able to like work with our students, actually fine art students, in design. And we intended to integrate local, internal, and urban gardening into a digital, curricular, and narrative format as a response to online, communal, and environmental learning needs throughout the pandemic. So this is what we're seeing is like a Zoom meeting from ISO to the students. And the vision actually treats the three ISO garden sites as portals to accessible urban gardening strategies that open up various opportunities for social and academic engagement. So I think the goal here is to really encourage more students to get into this work that all of the speakers here are doing, because it is worth going into, but it's not exactly like the best advertised social roles. So uh, during my site visit in early 2021, Sir JJ, which is the gardener of ISO, taught me a lot about their ongoing gardening projects and potential for sustainability, art education, and community building, especially as quarantine protocols continue to restrict Filipinos inside their homes. So a lot, I don't know if it's the same in different parts of uh, the world or Asia, but everyone is like a plantito or a plantita. So maybe that could be like put into like a wider like use, and understand how these are parts of like community building activities. With ISO's ongoing projects and mission, E-punla in particular proposes to experiment on ways to introduce gardening methods, environmental efforts, and social transformation to the fine arts elective class Arts 181 via an online format. So this is from April to May, a little bit shorter than Omehen. In particular, the efforts of the ISO team in establishing a nursery, a composting area, and 3 gardening sites will be translated into an online set of activities that students and prospective audiences can participate in. So this is what we're seeing now, is actually like a tour that we did live via Zoom. Because I mean, people like sit through webinars a lot, like probably you do now. But we took them on a tour, even if the signal is pretty bad, and sometimes it could get frustrating. But I think the students were able to enjoy just being taken somewhere, mobile actually, via a class. And it was interesting to see, like in the end of the class, students are asked to collaborate with ISO personnel and board to work with projects that would disseminate and actually encourage more people to like work on the same projects that they're already working on. So it's very, again, the digital space allows for us to like see this variety of efforts, especially from like students also, on how gardening could be something that is more exciting and like more engaging, even given this situation. So here's a C-ball card game from students. This is an online magazine conducted by students and integrating their own like interests as well, like feng shui and what else? Yeah, and like making pots and sculptural like ceramics. And there's also like an online PDF that ISO could disseminate further, and an interactive map about it. So yeah, so mostly those are, I mean, just to show you like the video of our final activity is just like to spell out to spell out the letters of like E-punla and FA and C-carp and ISO in using organic materials, which is like a pretty simple like assignment, but it underscores the collaborative aspect of the entire project. So there, those are my uh, contributions to this. Oh, sorry, I have to like just show the show the collaborators that we've had, and just to acknowledge their um, contributions. So here's just the list of our collaborators as well. So we listed also the vegetables because they offered their lives to be part of this project, and they are our inspiration as well. So thank you so much, everyone.
Great, Alfred. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Alfred, for sharing your experiences with co-creating your projects, Omehen with the Lumad Bakwit Schools and your project E-punla with the ISO or institution. Now, for the participants, if you have any questions, again, please do send them through the Zoom chat box or through the Facebook live stream comment section, and we'll raise them later in the open forum. Now, for our next speaker, we will have Mr. Manuel Alcantara Abinales, also more known as Noli. He will speak about constructing community resilience, the case of Buklod Tao. Now, Noli is the president and founder of Buklod Tao Incorporated, which is a non-profit organization based in Banaba, San Mateo, Rizal. Let us now welcome Noli Abinales. Noli Abinales, you may open your video.
Hi everyone, I am Noli Manuel Alcantara Abinales. I'm the president and founder of Buklod Tao Incorporated. My organization, Buklod Tao, is the community resilience laboratory of Ateneo de Manila University Master in Disaster Risk and Resilience. And we are also the community-based organization partner of coastal cities at risk in the Philippines. The second slide shows Barangay Banaba risk map. Buklod Tao is located in one of the 15 barangays of our municipality. The name of our municipality is San Mateo in the province of Rizal. This map shows the risks of our community. First, we have two rivers. The major river known as Marikina River, and this is downstream going towards Marikina City. Then adjoining the river, Marikina River, is one tributary river we call Nangka River. This is also downstream, and the upstream part is going to another city, which is Marikina City towards the east. The community where I work with, starting in 1993, is nestled between these two rivers. Along the embankments of Nangka River is the community called South Libis, and then there are also informal settlers along the Medyo River, Marikina River, and they are all informal settlers. I, for one, live here inside the subdivision, Doña Pepeng subdivision. Also, this map, it shows within the community there are two road networks. First, the national road called General Antonio A. Luna, and then intersecting to it is another road going to the west, we call the San Mateo Batasan Road. So we have two bridges too, the San Mateo Batasan Bridge, and then also the Nangka Bridge. The risks are the following. The two rivers are shallow. They are easily overflowing during heavy rains. Another risk is that there are so many informal settlers residing along the embankments of Marikina River here and Nangka River. And also to the west, we have another risk, which is the what we call the West Valley Fault System. And then to the east of our barangay, we have towards here, we have the East Valley Fault System. We will notice here in this map that there are so many river systems, As I mentioned, Marikina River, Nangka River, and then there are two creeks, but this map only shows one. But I would say the old map of Barangay Banaba shows two creeks. One creek is missing. So I would call this the case of the missing creek. Because of development and human intervention, the creek is missing now. And underground, under the national road, it is hidden. And it drains here towards Nangka River. This area is visited by a yearly flooding. And I noticed when my family transferred here in 1971, there is a 10-year cycle of big flood. In 1977, then in 1998, and then in 2008, and then in 2008, 2009, that was the tropical storm Ondoy, the international code name Pichana. And then last year, 2020, we have two consecutive typhoons in November, tropical storm Wally and tropical storm Ulysses. So this is a vulnerable community, and because of this vulnerability and frequent experiences with flooding, landslides, and the prospect of the big one, the earthquake, Buklod in 1997 decided to have uh, a community awareness initiative with the members. Here they are part of the members of the organization assembled in front of our gate, and this is a reenactment of our assembly way back in June of 1997 when we had our first community risk assessment. So sometime in June 22, 1997, inside the chapel, we conducted our community risk assessment of community awareness. This is now a reenactment. This picture is a reenactment of that assembly inside the community chapel. This is no longer the chapel. This is already inside the second floor of our medium-rise building, what we call Buklod Center. The community risk assessment consisted of making our members aware of our vulnerabilities. By the way, the participants of our communities assessment in June 1997 were residents of the embankments of Nangka River over here, and the residents of the embankments of Marikina River over here. And these are members already of Buklod, and I would like to add that Buklod started with our basic ecclesial communities organized by yours truly in 1993, 1994, 1995. And in 1996, we formally were truly in a vulnerable situation. And that was the first time that a community is able to put down in paper through hazard mapping our vulnerabilities, our risks. And so our information dissemination was teamed up among the community members. After the community risk assessment or community awareness, we have the so-called organizing and capacity building. Well, it is true, Buklod was already organized during that time in June of 1997. we have to reorganize ourselves, meaning we have to organize specific or specialized groups to take care of our preparedness and safety. So we have organized in 1997 three groups. One group, I go back again to the map. In 1997, we organized one group here for preparedness against flood. Another group here, second group here in the middle of Maritima River. And then a third group here along the Barangay Banaba and San Mateo Road. Apart from our organizing initiative way back in 1997, we have also capacity building. Capacity building through publication of our boat, this one boat. During that time, we were able to fabricate our own fiberglass rescue boats. Today, we have already 14 boats, small design and big design. This is a big design of our boats, and with a smaller design, this one. And all the 14 boats are with the teams. We have what we call the disaster risk reduction teams, all provided with capacities, rescue ropes, rescue boats, life vests, and paddles. This is another newly organized group, part of our adaptive resilience nowadays. This is one community which needs one group because of flooding. So we provided them with rescue ropes, life ring, like this, and boats, a bigger design boat. This is a Graham boat, Graham Mayhead boat, assigned to that team. Now we have the so-called adaptive resilience. We are adapting now to our resilience. We have some gaps. Some gap is that we observe that the paddles of the boats are not enough because they are pushing the boat, pressing the paddles against the walls of houses. So we provided all the 14 boats with 15 poles. This is the 15 poles that we fabricated last summer of 2021, and all the boats are provided with poles to have the teams propel their boats with these poles. Another adaptive resilience that we are undertaking is when we have this COVID-19 pandemic that started in March of 2020. We started to adapt COVID-19 protocols, like, for example, thermal scanning, where hand washing, where sanitation, alcohol, where registration and contact tracing. Community. Why intergeneration? Because we endorse our products to the younger generations. This product, what we call pots or tetra pots, these pots were sold by our mothers and fathers as a post-disaster recovery or livelihood recovery program funded by Christian Aid in 2009. Now we have lots of these tetrapods, and after 11 years, the younger generations are taking over. They are making use of these pots sold by the elders to be utilized for day gardening. So We have an intergeneration community. Older persons having outputs of some products and turn over to the younger generation. So it is a intergeneration community. We have also urban container gardening towards food resilience. So we are now conducting container gardening with the youth. And thank you very much to Ateneo de Manila University, Sociology, Anthropology Department, under the ward of Dr. Emma Ensocorio, and also we CCR. We were the children that provided with garden gloves, throwers, of course our Tetra Packs were used, and also compost soil. So here again, our community members gathered together in our Buklod Center. Other initiatives of Buklod for seniors is that, as I mentioned earlier, we have a fiberglass biscuit for fabrication. We fabricate our own boats, fiberglass. And because of the proximity of our community to the West Valley Port line, and because of the liquefaction hazard map San Mateo, we conducted our own community awareness about the cascading hazard of Banaba. The assistance also of the master students of Dr. Emma Ensocorio, Masters in Disaster Risk and Resilience, we were able to produce threefold brochures for cascading hazards in Barangay Banaba, where ground shaking, liquefaction, and fire are described. Also in this undertaking, we did some town watching of the area subjected to this cascading hazard, especially liquefaction. And of course, our Barangay Banaba Council took notice of this, and they took some measures for the safety of the barangay residents. The Buklod also undertakes solid waste management. We also have our own technology of reducing or recycling, upcycling, discarded produce packs. And our mothers, our sewers, are producing bags, grocery bags, envelopes, and even laptop bags. Also, we do not burn leaves, dry leaves. We gather them and we turn them into compost. So, to go back to the previous slide, the right picture shows our composting activity. Yes, we have our own organic compost mix production, and we have perfected it. So we are also undertaking support for evacuees. Every year we do this, more especially last year, in November of 2020, when we had this Tropical Storm Noli and Tropical Storm Ulysses, and even during COVID-19 pandemic. So we have the pictures here of evacuees going to our evacuation center, and we practice sanitation, food bath area for the sleepers of the evacuees. We conduct community kitchen for the evacuees to serve them hot meals. At the right, we have our evacuees. We have healthy relationship with our barangay disaster risk reduction office, and also we have a healthy relationship with non-government organizations like the Center for Disaster Preparedness, who conducted psychosocial intervention for evacuees and flood affected members. Buklod has expanded its community relations or community resilience with our engagements with international and national and local bodies. Buklod community resilience has been re-echoed in Vietnam, in Thailand, Bangkok, Thailand, in Bangladesh, and India. And also here locally, Buklod shares its community resilience experience with the Office of Civil Defense just this month of July. Thank you very much. Salamat po. Mabuhay po tayong lahat. Good day.
So we have now, let me introduce now the last speaker for this morning session, Dr. Porio, Dr. Emma Porio, who will speak about systems thinking and transdisciplinarity in community resilience innovation. So Dr. Porio is the project leader and principal investigator of the coastal cities at risk in the Philippines. He is also the co-director of the Master of Disaster Risk and Resilience of Ateneo de Manila University. Let's now
Can you
welcome Dr. Emma. Yes, we can see your slides po.
Okay, so basically, I just want to say, what is systems thinking and transdisciplinarity going on in this community resilience innovations? As Isa said earlier, it's common sense. We have to work together. As I like this, I use this now because I really think this is what we have to do. That we cannot be working alone. We have to work together in order to build our own personal. And I always like to show that SICAR PH is able to do because of the so many people that have worked with us, supported us, just like in Buklod Dao, as Isa was saying. Also, like Alfred and Lenny was saying, when they say no one left behind, it's because resilience work is for everyone and also by everyone, okay? So I just thought of this, when you said, if you look at, systems thinking is really looking at, the whole thing. You can apply this. If you see there, actors, goals, institutions, and resources. So, I mean, you have, each community, each person has a goal, each person has a resources, and I will tell you later in terms of, I like this. I found this in sustainability science. What they're saying really, that if we have to sustain and be resilient with our capacity, we have to build different capacities. So the capacity to measure, like as researchers, we measure, right? Noli is doing a risk profiling, measuring what are the risks in the community. Alfred there is measuring what the capacities of the people there, the partners, the kinds of resources available like that. So I like this very much, that first you have the capacity to measure progress. You also have the capacity to promote equity, to think that, we are entitled to accessing resources in an equitable manner. We must also have capacity to adapt to shocks. For example, I was shocked earlier with the loss of my internet, but what can we do? We go ahead, no? And so Patty took over. We must have the capacity to link knowledge to action, and we must have the capacity to transform and the capacity to govern cooperatively, okay? So those are capacities necessary. So I will not go into it, but really, as I said earlier, transdisciplinarity is a higher level synthesis because we universities are used to disciplinary, multidisciplinary, and then interdisciplinary. But transdisciplinary is working with all the other actors. We have to collaborate with them. Like, for example, what Lenny is doing, and what Alfred is doing. We have to be transdisciplinary now, and we have to be systems oriented. So yeah, I will not. You have a copy of this, but I will really just want to stress where is transdisciplinarity. If you notice, with all these projects, community-based projects, it involves everyone's discipline. There are artists, there are planners, there are evacuees, there are community leaders, there are researchers, and the like, okay? So I think you've seen this also, that really science and practice is really connected with our principles of co-generation of knowledge, and how we co-create, how we co-create our capacities and process, and then we co-own, okay? And I have done this, but basically I want to specialize again. I like what Isa said. Systems thinking is, common sense. It's if you realize where each one is located. So there are roles, rules, and capacities, and we call it, put it together, okay? So I just, in the PowerPoint that I shared with you last Tuesday, there are 4 kinds of this, but really just look at that. The tools and methods for understanding, co-designing, assessing, and adapting the system. First, you understand the system. We must look at their influences, boundaries, and relationship. We co-design them, and then we assess and adapt through regular dialogue and collaboration. We must manage the tensions within and without, and the multiple perspectives, okay? And we recognize that all of us have different knowledge systems and cultures, okay? So I've shown this to you, that it really, intersectoral consultations and intersectoral engagement and connecting, okay? So I will not go, you have that, but really I want to show that because we're talking about communities, that I like this, that we develop what we call the resilience bingo card, that each of the components that I explained to you is already translated down to the barangay level. And I showed you that really systems thinking and transdisciplinary is a whole of society approach, okay? Everyone has a play, and I just want to show this. Today, what we showed is really the blue, the community initiatives. So when I said earlier about micro, meso, macro, and they are vertically connected and horizontally connected, okay? So, and really, systems thinking is really just, connecting the different systems. And here we are basically saying that we have to connect our work on this asset risk reduction to the causal forces that really causes this asset risk. And we have to be cognizant of its application at the multi-scale, at the local, national, or community level, and the industry and like, okay? So thank you very much. We will, so I will end there, and I will basically will go to the questions, Patty. All
Thank you,
right.
Dr. Coria, for your presentation. Now,
And
I see that some questions have already been answered by the speakers through the chat box. So if there are any questions now that haven't yet been answered by any of the speakers, you may chat them through the Zoom chat box now, or for those streaming or watching through the Facebook live stream, you may comment your questions below the live stream. If anyone has any questions. For any of the speakers, for Dr. Noralene Uy, for Ms. Isa Mijares, for Mr. Alfred Marasigan, for Noli Abinales, or for Dr. Emma Porio, you may now ask your questions through the chat box.
Hey guys, I want to hear your voice. You're not like Cannoli, right? Who
We
is
also
silenced by
highly
his...
we also
Yeah.
highly encourage the Asian Peace Builder scholars to take part and send their questions for the speakers.
Okay, I have a question for Alfred. This is Kiyomi. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, Kiyomi, we can hear you.
Okay, so Alfred, I was really intrigued by your statement when you said, especially in the Mindanao context, cultures and identities are being actively disintegrating due to threats politically and their security as well as their land. And so I would like to hear a little bit more about how your work was helping to counter that disintegration of their identities. Thank you.
Hi, Kiyomi. I think one story that I would like to share is that despite the podcast, despite the podcast format of Omehen, I think some, if not all, of my like best conversations with the Bukwit school students are not recorded. So I think I think I would also like to recommend this reading called Refusing Research by Eve Tak and Yang. And I think sometimes it's also good to know that even if arts is like aims ideally to like lift people up and provide those platforms, sometimes they also do have a right to not share that kind of information, or that it could, like at worst it could be like extractive even for the practice. But in any case, I feel like um, how the project kind of aims for them to like find this space, like I mean safe space could be like very much overused nowadays, but like just general space to like physical and emotional space to uh to be more than their struggles. Because sometimes I think the Buckwheat School, what we found in our like project is that sometimes I think they light up more when we just talk, when we don't always talk about these like social ramifications of like being indigenous people, and just talking about like we like watching these TV shows, or we're interested in this class because of this specific topic. So it doesn't always have to be heavy, and we should be able, or at least we should be able to allow them to just also be themselves and be like more than a community. I think because sometimes
Any
I think
more?
communities could be like
Um,
very much othered sometimes.
we will what Patty and Josh and I will do, a record like my introduction and also Canolis later, then we'll post it later. But what I just want to say is that all those initiatives here are really showing how you can apply, how you can work with the groups that you're working in your capstone project, also in your home institution, also with other people. Okay. uh, it's really important that if you look at Cannoli, I mean, if there's anything, as Isa said, Cannoli is the wisest leader we've ever found. I really like what he's doing. He just goes ahead, but also connects, transparency, accountability, generosity, niceness. Those are all in him. So okay, so um, any more questions? Because I think we have to end. Hey guys, I want to hear from you.
So if there are any more questions, please.
I hope I was able to answer Kiyomi's
Uh,
question.
Alfred, I'm still waiting. I want really an ebook from your all, because I'm really excited with the way the young artists like Isa, Laura, and Alfred have really brought into being, I'd say, in terms of, connecting to ourselves, connecting to the community, connecting to the larger world that are at risk, and where can we contribute with our talents, with our ideas, and our actions. So Alfred had the ebook, and
Doc
also
Emma, we're sticking with the oral tradition because I think I don't know, even the written part, like
I know.
what I was gonna add to like Kiyomi, an answer to Kiyomi's question is that the Lumad students mentioned to us that they were toured in like a musical like museum, I think, and I think the experts are teaching them to play like a kudlong,
No,
I
I
think, like a
I don't
three
like that. I
like a three stringed instrument, and then they said that they missed playing that because they actually do play that as well. So it
no
was something that was like taken away from them. But
no
yeah, I think an
I
ebook is like a great like
an ebook
opportunity to
with their
like
voices in.
disseminate these kinds of like
Yeah.
information, especially, and to
I mean,
even like make them part of the design process, because
yes,
that would be like very
make them part of the
collaborative.
design process, and their words, their meanings, how they view their whole participation there. Because how can we show this great initiative, Alfred? Please assure your partners that we respect the integrity of their voice, the integrity of their initiative, the integrity of their identity and belonging, and their connectedness. And I think you can do it together, okay, Alfred? Okay, thank you very much. Um, um, Patty, I
All
think
right.
you can end this. And
Okay.
by the way, tomorrow we will not have a class. It's a holiday. Okay.
Okay.
So
All right. Thank you so much for all the attendees. We will truly appreciate your feedback from the proceedings of today's webinar. So please send in your comments through our evaluation form. It's there in the Zoom chat box, and I will also post it in the Facebook live stream. So we're grateful for all the attendees and guests of today's webinars, and we hope to see you again in the future webinars hosted by the Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines
on
project
Thursday.
on Thursday. We will see you again on Thursday for session 4 of this webinar series. Thank you very much. Dr. Emma, do you have
Yeah. On
any
Thursday, it's our last webinar, and I've invited the former president of the Clinical Sociology Association of the International Sociology, and also a member of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, but very much involved in conflict resolution. So some of you have been talking about, community conflict sometimes and things like that. We will have that webinar is really focused on one sector and how you can become how do you become systems oriented even though you're dealing with one sector. Like on Thursday we will look at housing, gender rights, and climate resilient housing technologies. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you, Alfred. Thank you, Isa, Kanoli, and all of you. You've been very generous with your time, with your patience, and also very generous in sharing your ideas. So thank you very much. Guys, for the APS scholars, I'll see you on Wednesday, 9 o'clock, okay? Or 8:30 if you like. I'm always in the Zoom at 8:30, all right? At Wednesday. And
Thank
meanwhile,
you,
have a
Dr.
good vacation.
Toyo.
Rest, relax, be happy, and create your own garden, okay? As what Alfred was talking about, okay? Thank you. Bye-bye.